Going into an Apple interview, what are some types of questions that you might expect? And this advice is primarily for technical roles, because technical people don't know what types of non-technical questions should they expect during an interview. But also, I believe this also is valuable for pretty much any type of role going to an Apple interview. And in my previous videos, I covered, lists with the most commonly asked questions. And if you've been following them carefully, I also covered a video with Apple's 7 core values that are specific, ever since Tim Cook took over from Steve Jobs. And I believe that's actually a golden mine of information when it comes to the type of questions that you might expect. And let me explain to you how this works. Usually when these companies talk about their core values or leadership principles, or they might name them differently, they actually want to template, to give a framework to the types of behaviors of the people that supposedly do well with their companies. And in the case of Apple, they also have these 7 new principles, I call them, under Tim Cook. They are namely great products, simple not complex, ecosystem, collaboration, say no, excellence, and accept mistakes. By the way, I gave them these names myself, so it's only the behaviors that they actually talk about in various media. Now, how can you extract questions, relevant questions, from these core values? Well, let's go vice versa. Let's start with the last one, with accept mistakes. This is very much a huge topic in behavioral interviewing. That is of accepting failure, of taking ownership of failure, and even more importantly, of what you learn from that failure. So failure questions is something you would want to prepare for going into an interview with Apple, both the phone interview as well as, especially, I would say, the on-site interview. What types of failures can they ask you about? A time when you made a mistake. This would be the most obvious one. And again, take ownership of the mistake and talk about what you learned from it. And ensure it's a proper mistake, of course, because if it wasn't a mistake, if it was the client's fault, then you're in trouble here, right? So failures is a very important topic that you should prepare for, and they themselves talk about these types of behavior. Now, the next one would be excellence. We participate only in markets where we can make a significant contribution. So this should give you an idea on the type of people they like to work with and the type of behavior they encourage. So ensure, for example, if you're going, what's the best project that you've done in the past? Ensure it shows a level of excellence that would be indicative of a company such as Apple. Simply put here, what's your most successful project should show your excellence. Another behavior you would want to take seriously is say no. So if there's one thing that brings to mind here is have backbone, disagree, and commit. This would be the equivalent at Amazon, for example. And this is another very huge topic going into interview, because who wants to hire someone that's agreeable, that's too agreeable, that says yes sir, yes sir, yes sir to whatever they're asked to do? That's so to be clear, that's not how high performing companies work, and that's not how people in well-paid jobs work either. So you should think of situations where you actually refuse or said no to, maybe not to a customer, because you're not supposed to be in a front-facing customer role here, but maybe to an internal one, right? When you thought like something was not right, and you went on and refused to do it and explained why that was not right, and fixed it eventually and had the correct approach here. The next category here is simple, not complex. Like, can you tell me about the time when you came up with a simple solution to a complex problem? This would be the obvious question. and ensure that so you see the way that interviewers will screen you on this one, simple not complex, is also not only by the example that you give, but how clearly can you communicate it. So simply not complex also applies to your own answer itself. So if you, for example, if you give them an answer in 10 minutes over a thing that you simplified, which was very complex, chances are, you could have communicated that a lot more concisely, right? So keep this in mind as well when answering these types of questions. The next area is collaboration. We believe in deep collaboration and cross-pollination of our groups, which allows us to innovate in a way that others cannot. Now, teamwork is something that is rarely exhibited as a desired skill set in a company's core values, but something that I can guarantee you is actually probably the number one, maybe number two, the second most addressed topic in job interviews. Because for these companies, unless you don't know, it's the main reason why, the main dangers from hiring someone is hiring a toxic employee, someone that doesn't do well within a team context. For them, this is one of the main problems, because it's extremely expensive, like both in terms of money, but more importantly in terms of progress. So it's very common actually, and if you ask many managers, you'll see that what they fear most is hiring a toxic employee that will simply basically destroy their team. So needless to say, teamwork is a very important topic within these interviews. And how do you test someone on whether they're good at collaborating with someone? Could be as simple as tell me about the time when you had to apologize to someone. They want to see your interpersonal skills here. Or tell me about the time when tell me about a team project that you worked on, and how did you collaborate with every member of the team, and how did you ensure everything was working smoothly. Now, what are some common mistakes here? Some common mistakes here is especially with technical people, is that you focus too much on the technical aspect. For example, in a team project that you worked on, you explain your part, only what you did. When in fact, the question is, tell me about the team project that you worked on, and how did you communicate with other people, right? So you shouldn't be talking too much about the frameworks that you implemented, your role in the team, but to focus on how you communicate, how you ensure that the communication was smooth between you and others, right? And with respect to my previous question, time when you had to apologize to someone, it's basically the time when you had to, you made a mistake, right? So you should again own the mistake and the failure story that I touched upon in the beginning. Or another interesting question here could be a time when you had to work with a difficult coworker. Now, the reason why someone would ask you this is to see how would you deal with that situation. I mean, a bad example would be, yes, he was difficult, so I took ownership of the situation, did it myself, and moved on, right? This is a bad example. This would not show you as a team player. This shows you as someone getting stuff done, but getting stuff done on the short term, not having a long-term perspective, not having that team focus. So a better approach here would be that you first listen, you had a conversation with them, you listened to whatever they had to say, then you thought about what would be the best way, what would be the best approach to deal with the situation. You eventually called upon another meeting, maybe came up with a technical solution if you want. But the idea is that you want to get buy-in from that person. You want to earn their trust so you could eventually collaborate moving further on different projects. So these, I believe, these would be the main ones that would basically give you the most questions, the most possible questions that might get asked in a job interview. And I left out two of them: great products and ecosystem. Now, of course, product managers would expect a couple of these, on great products and as well as the ecosystem. But I would say these are niche roles, so they're not. I have other videos on 8 to 12 where I cover questions for product manager and such. But I believe these 5 core values would be very representative when it comes to the types of questions you would expect in a job interview with Apple. Of course, the non-technical part of the interview, and especially for more technical roles.